Hey guys, tonight we're going underground. Way, way underground. Past the mud, past the rats, past even the reach of light. You're not a soldier with a rifle, not a pilot in a biplane. You're something stranger, a WWI tunnel digger. Your job? Burrow through the earth, under no man's land, hoping to plant explosives under the enemy, or stop theirs from reaching you first. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know your local time and where you're tuning in from in the comments. I love seeing our little sleep story squad scattered all across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive at the Western Front expecting trenches, mud, and maybe, just maybe, a glimpse of heroic combat. Instead, someone hands you a bag of tools and points at a hole in the ground barely big enough to crawl into. Congratulations, a grizzled sergeant grunts. You're a sapper now. The tunnel mouth is dark and cold. You lower yourself in, boots scraping against the rough soil, already slick with water. The air changes almost instantly. Above ground, there's wind, gunpowder, the ever-present whistle of shells. Down here, it's damp breath. It's the scent of something ancient and rotting. And it's quiet. Too quiet. You'd think silence might be soothing after a battlefield. It's not. It presses in around you, as if the tunnel walls are listening. Because they are. And so is the enemy. Somewhere, perhaps only meters away, German sappers are digging toward you, trying to kill you before you kill them. You inch forward on hands and knees. Your helmet scrapes the low ceiling. The beam of your carbide lamp flickers, reflecting off wet chalk and half-rotted timbers. You ask the guy ahead of you, maybe he's from Yorkshire, maybe Wales, you're too anxious to remember how deep you are. He whispers, "About 30 foot, mate, just under Jerry's trench line." That's when it hits you. You're beneath no man's land. Literally. Not beside it, not across it. You are a worm in the world's most dangerous soil. Above you, men are getting blown to bits by mortars. But down here, you can be crushed, drowned, poisoned, or just lost, forever. If the walls collapse, there's no rescue. They won't even mark where you died. 1 minute you're here, scratching at the clay with your trench knife. The next? Buried with no ceremony. Just another part of the mud. Historians still argue whether tunneling was technically more dangerous than frontline trench fighting. But the difference is, in the trench, you at least see the bullet coming. Down here, it's always behind you, or underneath you, or maybe not even coming, just waiting. The tunnel curves, gets narrower. Someone behind you swears softly, knees cramped, back locked in a permanent crouch. You reach a junction where the air smells faintly metallic. That's fresh timber and sweat. A new branch has been dug here. It heads south, sloping slightly downward. You're told to follow that path. You do. What choice do you have? The deeper you go, the warmer it gets, and the wetter. It's July. You thought summer would mean heat and dust, but 30 feet underground, the earth sweats. Condensation drips steadily from the support beams. Your uniform clings to you, heavy as canvas soaked in oil. A voice ahead calls out, softly but urgent. Candle just dropped. You freeze. Everyone does. The man up front lights a small stub of wax and holds it out, arm trembling. The flame flickers, then steadies. You all exhale. It's an old miner's trick. If the flame gutters or turns blue, there's gas in the tunnel. Methane, sometimes. Or worse, carbon monoxide from a backblast or rotting soil. That flickering flame. It's your only warning. Without it, you might just fall asleep mid-dig and never wake up. You hear water, not a trickle, a flow. Someone's broken into a groundwater pocket. It's minor, for now, but it could become a flood in minutes. You backtrack a little, only to notice something unnerving. Someone's drawn a skull in chalk on one of the walls. Under it, the words, 19th March, 5 lost. You don't ask what happened. Instead, you get back to work. You don't even use a shovel down here. The pickaxe is too loud. Instead, you scrape at the chalk with a sharpened entrenching tool, or, more commonly, a sharpened bayonet. Dig in silence. Bag the earth. Pass the bag back. The man ahead of you hums. It's not a tune you know. Something wordless, low, almost like a lullaby. You want to tell him to stop, but maybe he's not humming for you. Maybe he's humming for himself, to stop from unraveling. The ground is that quiet, that close, that alive. You wonder how long you've been down here. Minutes? Hours? It's easy to lose track when your entire world is a tunnel narrower than your outstretched arms. You glance at your fingers. They're trembling, and that's when you hear it. A scrape, not from your team, not from your tunnel. A scrape, just ahead, too close. And too careful. There's someone else down here, digging toward you. The sound stops. You hold your breath. Everyone does. The tunnel suddenly feels like a sealed tomb. One man slowly pulls out his stethoscope. Yes, a stethoscope, and presses it against the wall of the chamber, just beside your head. That's how primitive this is. No radar, no sensors, just listening. A cheap stethoscope and a trained ear trying to separate the whispers of death from the general groans of a shifting earth. He doesn't speak, just gives a curt nod. They're close. A few feet of soil separate your team from theirs. Could be a German mining squad. Could be Austrians. Could be a lone digger with a satchel full of explosives and a suicide wish. Doesn't matter. The sergeant mouths one word, still. And so, for the next hour, you barely move. Your nose starts to itch, your ankle cramps, but you dare not shift, because if they're listening too, and they are, they'll hear everything. One careless shuffle, one metal clink, and you've blown your cover. Welcome to the other war. The silent one. Above ground, it's chaos. Artillery, machine gun fire, dogs barking, men yelling over open comms. But down here, it's a duel fought by breath and patience, by pulse and paranoia. You can smell it now, wet chalk and fear, not metaphorical fear. Real, human fear, thick and sour. Someone farther back vomits softly into their sleeve. A rat scuttles past your hand. You don't flinch, you're too focused on the wall. Then, boom, but not from the other side. It's above you. Distant, muffled. A shell, likely. Maybe artillery. You can feel the tremor run through the tunnel ceiling. Dust falls like powder onto your helmet. A reminder that even if the other diggers don't find you, the war above might. Historians still argue whether these underground skirmishes altered the course of the war. Did all that digging, blasting, collapsing really make a difference? Maybe not in strategy. But it broke men. Quietly. Permanently. A whisper comes from the back. Sniffers down. You turn. The man with the stethoscope is pale, slumped, fainted. Dehydrated? Fear? Lack of oxygen? All of the above? You help drag him back through the tunnel, his limp body thumping gently over the uneven floor. He's breathing, but shallow. They pass forward a tiny flask of brandy, which he sips once and promptly throws up again. As you return to the front, you notice it again, the smell. Not just sweat and mold. Something sharper, acrid, faintly metallic. You recognize it from training, cordite. They're planning a charge. A miner behind you mutters a superstition, something about dead tunnels whispering back. You don't ask for details. There are a lot of ghost stories among tunnelers, tales of men who vanish, or entire shafts that get sealed accidentally, or of German voices echoing without a source. One British engineer claimed he saw lanterns bobbing in an abandoned shaft, lanterns that belonged to men buried a month before. Another swore he met a French sapper in a collapsed chamber, only to find out the man had died in 1915. You tell yourself it's nerves, but then again, you're talking to a rat for company. The deeper tunnelers go, the more feral they become. You've only been down here a day, maybe two, but already your hands have blistered from the constant scraping. You've got dirt in places you didn't know could hold dirt. Your voice is hoarse from whispering. But worst of all is the not knowing. You don't know how close the enemy diggers are. You don't know if the charge they're planting is set for tonight or tomorrow. You don't know if this tunnel is going to hold. You glance at the support beams, just timber, barely reinforced. They're already bowed, groaning under the weight of the world above. You notice one has a fresh crack. You don't say anything. No one ever does. Saying it makes it real. And then it happens. Again. A scrape. Louder. Then a dull thunk. You and your mates freeze. The air tightens. You mouth to the sergeant, "Clay kicking?" He nods grimly. Clay kickers, enemy miners using short-handled spades to dislodge soil. It's faster than bayonets, but also riskier. Louder. They're close. Really close. The sergeant signals, "Digger camouflage." That's basically a small charge. Not enough to destroy a tunnel, but just enough to collapse it on purpose and bury whatever's beneath. It's crude, terrifying, and entirely necessary. You help plant the charge. Just a few pounds of ammonal packed tightly, with a short fuse. It has to be precise. Too much, and you bury your own team. Too little, and you just give away your position. Your fingers tremble as you lay the wire. The fuse is timed for 60 seconds. Once lit, you all retreat, fast but silently. The tunnel seems to shrink with every foot you crawl. You can hear your heartbeat echo off the walls. 50 seconds, 40, 30. You make it to a junction. Someone mutters a quick prayer, something half remembered from childhood. 10 seconds. You all press yourselves flat. Then, the explosion isn't thunderous. It's more of a whoomp, a dull gut punch of a sound that makes the earth buckle. A puff of air blasts down the tunnel, throwing grit into your eyes. You cough. The candle flickers violently. When the dust settles, you go back. And what you find is silence. No voices. No scraping. Just earth. Collapsed. Crushed inwards like a clenched fist. Did you bury them? Probably. Did you bury too many? No way to know. But here's the kicker. They'll dig again. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe next week. Maybe tonight. And so will you, because the silent war never really ends. It just moves a few feet sideways. The next shift is already crawling in as you try to stagger out. You're barely upright. Your knees ache. Your spine has become an accordion. And still, they need the tunnel extended another 6 meters before dawn. You protest. The officer shrugs. It's not digging if you're complaining. A joke, maybe. Hard to tell. You expected shovels, maybe a wheelbarrow. But no, you're handed a small entrenching tool, like a foldable spade you'd use for camping if you hated yourself, and told to work in total silence. Even that's a luxury. Some of the veterans still use a bayonet or the side of a ration tin to dig. Why? Because a metal shovel clinks, and a clink means you die. So you get to work with your spoon-sized blade and a pile of sandbags. Dig. Pass it back. Fill. Stack. Repeat. There is no rhythm. Just sweat, panting, and the constant fear that every scrape you make might echo into a German ear just a few meters away. The walls close in tighter with every stroke. You're hunched like a beetle, muscles trembling with each forward push. There's no room to swing anything. No leverage. Just your fingers scraping and a back that hates you more every minute. By hour 2, your hands are raw. The gloves you were issued tore 20 minutes in. Not that they mattered. The chalk down here eats fabric like acid. You wipe sweat from your eyes and smear your own dirt right back into them. Nice. Historians still argue whether British tunneling efforts had better technique than the Germans. The Germans, after all, were methodical, precise. They used listening posts more regularly. But the British? They had desperation. And desperation gets things done. A fellow digger, a Canadian from Nova Scotia, whispers a joke. "What's the difference between us and moles?" You grunt, not in the mood. Moles don't dig toward people trying to kill them. Okay, fine. That one earns a tiny exhale from your nose. Laughter's dangerous here, but so is losing your mind. And speaking of losing things, remember how you thought claustrophobia wasn't going to be a problem? That you were pretty chill with tight spaces? Yeah, that version of you is gone now, replaced by someone who panics every time a timber groans. And oh, do they groan? Loud creaks, subtle pops, one long dry sigh of shifting earth that makes everyone in the shaft freeze. You spot a new recruit, baby-faced. Still smells like soap. He's holding a sandbag and staring wide-eyed at the ceiling. First time? You whisper. He nods. You try to offer some comfort, but there's really nothing you can say. Because the truth is, even the most seasoned sappers lose it sometimes. One guy on your crew, Welsh maybe, was pulled out last week, curled into the fetal position, whispering about the walls whispering back. You thought it was an exaggeration. Until now. Because the tunnel does whisper. Not voices, not words, just the shifting, sighing sound of earth barely held at bay. Like it knows you're not supposed to be here. Like it's waiting for one mistake to swallow you whole. You pause to light your candle. The flame flutters, but steadies. For now. And then you hear it. Water. Not the trickle from condensation. No. A low bloop 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 sound, like something from a cracked pipe. You press your ear to the dirt. You hear it clearer now. Groundwater. Close. A saturated pocket ready to burst. You wave for the diggers to stop. The officer crawls forward, hisses through his teeth, and mutters, "Shift left." You obey, shifting the dig 2 feet off center, hoping to avoid the flood zone. No guarantee. But it's that or dig into a makeshift underground bathtub and drown before you even scream. Quirky fact, some tunnels were actually designed to flood. Not intentionally, of course, but once a water pocket was hit, they'd collapse the section on purpose to keep enemy diggers from following. Kind of a passive-aggressive underwater handshake. You can have this tunnel, Jerry, if you can breathe mud. You're 4 hours into your shift. Time has stopped mattering. There's only the next foot of soil, the next sandbag, the next flicker of your candle. A tap on your boot. You turn. The Nova Scotian grins. Fancy a smoke? You want to laugh. You really do. But you take the offered cigarette and light it off the flame. For a brief moment, the chalk walls glow amber, warm, almost peaceful. But then someone hisses, lamp off, and you drop the cigarette mid-puff. Not because of the gas risk this time, but because someone heard a voice. Not yours. Not English. German. Close. Too close. You all freeze again. You're developing a real talent for freezing. One of the older men, gray hair, soot-blackened face, leans forward and gently taps the wall. A few seconds pass. 3 taps come back. Morse code. You don't speak it, but the sergeant does. He listens, counts, then whispers, "They're marking progress," probably mapping the shaft. You whisper, "What do we do?" He doesn't answer for a while. Then, "We dig faster." So you do, quietly, desperately. And as your bayonet scrapes soil for the 1,000th time, you realize you're not digging toward escape, not toward victory, not even toward survival. You're just digging to delay the inevitable. You're starting to feel like part of the tunnel, not just in it, of it. Your clothes are crusted with chalk. Your fingers are permanently curled from gripping a bayonet like a pathetic digging spoon. Your ears buzz from the silence. Yes, buzz. Not from noise, but the absence of it. That sort of humming pressure that builds when everything is too quiet. Like your brain is trying to fill in the blanks with the sound of its own unraveling. You're in the listening post now. No digging, no moving, no talking. Just listening. You're one of 2 men stationed there for the next shift. Your entire job is to hear what the earth doesn't want you to hear. The stethoscope is passed gently between you. You press it to the clay wall, close your eyes, and wait. You hear everything. Soil shifting under its own weight. Water dripping on timber. The occasional skitter of something rat-like, but hopefully not rat-sized. And then, something deliberate. A scrape. Rhythmic, too precise to be natural, too faint to locate. The German diggers are nearby. You hand off the stethoscope to your partner, who nods. About 2 meters, maybe less. You whisper, "Are they digging toward us?" He doesn't answer. That's not encouraging. Historians still argue whether the tunnel wars ever had moments of face-to-face encounters, like 1 minute you're scraping dirt, and the next a German miner pokes through like a terrifying jack-in-the-box. Official records say it was rare, but unofficially, it happened. And if you were lucky, it was over quick. If not, well. You glance down at your tool belt. There's a revolver there, one of those clunky, mud-caked service pistols no one likes. Doesn't matter. If the tunnel wall breaks open and someone appears, there won't be time to aim. It'll be panic, chaos, elbows, dirt in your eyes, fists in your throat. You grip the bayonet tighter. The silence stretches. This is the part no one tells you about. The waiting. Above ground, there's shellfire, noise, adrenaline. Down here, the fight is mostly not fighting. Just endless hours of waiting for something to go horribly wrong. You lie down. Try to stretch your back in the narrow shaft. Your boots press against the wall behind you. Your helmet rests against the cold clay. You let your eyes close for just a second. Bad idea. You drift off. Dream for a moment of open skies, maybe a canal or a crowded pub, the clang of glasses and the warmth of laughter. Then, thump. You jolt awake, heart pounding. Another thump. Then, a faint crumbling noise. You exchange a look with your postmate. His expression is calm, which you've learned is not comforting. It means he's decided to be calm because panicking won't help. You press the stethoscope again. This time, the sound isn't scraping. It's hollowing. The enemy is digging an expansion chamber. That means they're planning a charge. Maybe a camouflage, maybe a full-scale mine. You crawl back toward the command dugout as fast as the tunnel allows, which is not fast at all. Every movement sends pebbles bouncing. You reach the sergeant, who nods grimly and marks an X on the chalkboard map. They're under the secondary shaft. Blast zones here. He taps it. We need a countercharge. Of course. You're volunteered. Because of course you are. You and 2 others haul a small box of explosives back down to a new spur of tunnel, digging not toward the enemy, but beneath them. The idea is to place your own camouflage, detonate it, and collapse their chamber before they finish it. High-stakes dirt chess. You begin to dig again, this time straight down at an angle. Every stroke is a gamble. Too deep, and your own tunnel might collapse. Too shallow, and you'll miss them completely. Quirky side note. Some teams used water glasses balanced on the floor to detect vibrations. If the surface rippled, someone nearby was moving. It was like Victorian seismology. Low-tech, high-stress. You're 4 feet in when the soil starts to change. It gets looser, fresher. That's how you know you're close. Your team plants the charge quickly, aminal again, packed into a canvas satchel. The fuse is set. 30 seconds. You don't even run. No time. You just back away and press against the walls like a cartoon character, dodging a train. The explosion is muffled, but massive. The entire tunnel inhales. Dust whooshes past you like a reverse avalanche. You cough, blink, swallow chalk. Then, silence. Again, someone crawls forward to assess. Comes back whispering. Their tunnel's gone. For now. Because in 3 days, maybe 5, they'll start digging again. Just a little farther east, or north, or right under your feet. That's the game. No victories. Just temporary pauses in the losing. As you crawl back toward the surface shaft, you feel your lungs straining. The candle flickers again, not from gas this time, but from movement. Air pressure changes. Maybe the earth settling. Maybe a draft caused by the detonation. Hard to say. And then you remember, there's no ventilation system. You breathe what you breathe. Stale air, sweat, rat farts. Sometimes you wonder if it'd be easier to just stay down here. Build a little mud bed, befriend the candle, give up on sunlight altogether. But then again, dinner's above ground. If it's still there when you return. Dinner, as it turns out, is cold biscuits, and something that once resembled bully beef. But at least it's not underground. You sit near the tunnel mouth, gulping air like it's a delicacy. The sky overhead is flat gray, no stars, just a blanket of gloom that weirdly feels luxurious compared to what you've just crawled out of. Then you smell it. Not food, not gunpowder. Rot. It's coming from the supply pile near the tunnel entrance. Timber supports gone soft, damp sandbags reeking of mildew and trench water. A shovel crusted with something that might be mud or not. You blink slowly. The chalk dust has dried into your eyelashes, and just when you think, maybe I'll get a full night's sleep, you hear the officer call out, "Rotated crew, back under in 2 hours. We've got a collapse warning." Fantastic. No one talks about how heavy the air feels in a collapsing tunnel until you've felt it. There's a pressure, a weird stillness, like the earth is holding its breath. And then it sighs. You don't hear collapses so much as feel them. A tremor in the soil, a groan in the timber, a brief second of silence, followed by everything not being where it just was. You return to the shaft. The entrance looks the same, but something's off. The air's thick. Your boots squish in chalk mud you don't remember from earlier. A rat bolts past you going out, which is never a good omen. Animals always seem to know before you do. You lower yourself in. Same posture, same tight crawl. But this time, it's different. Because now you know what could happen. Before, it was theoretical. A collapse was a story, a myth. Now, it's personal. You arrive at the dig site. A partial collapse. One of the older support beams split, a small cave-in, but dangerous. If it spreads, the whole arm of the tunnel might go. You're handed a fresh timber post. It's damp. The bark is still clinging in places. You and another digger wedge it into position. Then another. Then another. You're rebuilding the skeleton of a beast that keeps trying to crush you. And the whole time, the roof above you drops little flecks of chalk onto your helmet, like snow. But with a vengeance. One of the newer men, a Scot with hands too clean for this job, asks, "Why don't we just dig deeper, into the rock?" You stifle a laugh. Not because it's funny, but because it's so adorably hopeful. There is no deeper. There's only what the clay allows. Some sectors were dug through blue clay, others, like where you are now, through chalk. If you're really unlucky, you get wet sand, which collapses like a toddler's sandcastle in a rainstorm. Fun historical tidbit. During the tunneling operations near Hoog, some teams tried using concrete domes to support the chambers. Sounds clever, right? Until one exploded and sent concrete shrapnel bouncing around like confetti from hell. You finish placing the new supports and sit back for a moment. Then you hear it, a hiss. At first, you think it's water, then gas. Then you realize it's not coming from above or around. It's coming from below. You tap the ground. It's soft. Too soft, you whisper. "We've got a bubble." The sergeant nods grimly and orders everyone out. No one argues. Because when a gas bubble forms beneath the floor, it means something deeper is shifting. An old shaft collapsing. A natural pocket releasing. Or, worst case, the enemy undermining your tunnel. You back out fast. Your knees slip in the mud. Your candle sputters and dies. The exit shaft is ahead, but it feels like miles. Then the floor gives out. Not all of it. Just enough. Enough for your left boot to vanish into open space. You fall hard, scraping your elbow against the wall. Pain shoots up your arm like electricity. But you don't scream, because screaming means echo. Echo means sound. Sound means detection. You scramble backward, heart hammering, boots stuck in the hole behind you. A fellow sapper pulls you free just before the ground collapses entirely. It's not a mine detonation. Not yet. But it could have been. You lie there for a moment, back flat against the chalk, staring at the ceiling like it's made of teeth. Historians still debate how many men were lost to underground accidents, cave-ins, floods, misfires. Records are patchy. Some men were simply never seen again. No dog tags, no remains, just gone. And the war rolled on. Eventually, you make it back to the dugout. The officers are arguing about whether to re-enter the shaft. One wants to collapse it entirely to block German advance. Another insists it's salvageable. You stare at them both, covered in bruises and half-dried mud, and think, I was nearly buried alive, and these guys are talking about it like a gardening project. A strange calm settles over you. It's not peace, more like resignation. The tunnel wants you dead. It always has. You wash your hands in a tin basin filled with water that's more brown than clear. It stings where the chalk has scraped your knuckles raw. You look at your fingers, nails crusted, skin cracked, and wonder if you'll ever feel clean again. Probably not. You sleep like a corpse, not peacefully, more like out of necessity. Your body crashes, not your mind. The dreams are shallow and strange, twisting earth, faceless comrades, tunnels that spiral into nothing. And then someone shakes your shoulder. Wake up. You're needed topside. You blink, confused. Topside? That's new. You crawl out of your dugout, boots squelching in morning mud. The sky is a pale smudge. Fog rolls over the trench parapets like ghost fingers. You almost forget there's a world up here. Until you hear the pop-pop of distant rifle fire and the thud of artillery reminding you where you are. But the real surprise is what's waiting for you. A general, not some muddy lieutenant or chalk-dusted NCO. No, this man is clean, shaved. His boots shine. His coat fits like it was tailored by someone who's never heard a shell scream overhead. He's standing beside a map, frowning at a drawing of your tunnel network, like he's been asked to approve a plumbing job. Can it be extended another 20 meters due east, he asks. Your sergeant grunts something non-committal. The general doesn't notice. He's already checking his pocket watch. And here's where it hits you. The folks above ground don't actually understand what you do. To them, you're a red line on a paper, a risk calculation. If the tunnel collapses, they don't mourn. They reassign. If it succeeds, they nod approvingly and move on to the next idea that sounds clever on a chalkboard. Historians still argue whether High Command truly grasped the psychological toll on tunnelers. Official reports reference morale fatigue or efficiency decline. But what does that even mean when your entire job involves digging towards someone who's also digging toward you? You're not a soldier in the traditional sense. You're bait. You head back underground after a brief stretch and a sip of lukewarm tea. The new tunnel segment is even narrower than the last. The chalk here is soft, but unpredictable. You have to shore up every meter as you go. Someone tells you this area is nicknamed the lung. Why? Because it breathes. No, really. When it rains heavily above, the water displaces the air pockets underground. The soil compresses and exhales gases. The whole area wheezes like a dying animal. You crawl through the lung. You can feel the pressure on your chest increase. The air smells different here, mustier. Like sour cabbage and burnt matches. You light a candle to test for gas. The flame is blue. Everyone freezes. Someone whispers, "Carbon monoxide." There's no time to argue. You retreat instantly. Even mild exposure can put a man down for days. In high doses, it doesn't even give you a chance to choke. It just shuts you off like a bad radio. Quirky trick? Some diggers used mice or canaries as living detectors. If the animal dropped, you had maybe 30 seconds. It wasn't humane. But it worked. You resurface, coughing hard, and report the gas pocket. The officer frowns. We'll vent it and keep going. Vent it? That means opening a vertical shaft, risky as hell, since it might collapse or be spotted by the enemy. But they approve it anyway. The general wants his 20 meters. You and 2 others dig upward now, toward daylight, but carefully, like you're trying not to wake the sky. A gust of wind eventually spills down, cold and clean. You nearly sob from the sensation. It's the first real air you've tasted in days. A small canvas flap is erected to hide the opening. You patch your breathing mask, vent the tunnel, and wait. After an hour, the candle flame stabilizes. You go back in. And here's the kicker. Someone has to stay behind as the shift rotates. They need a man posted at the shaft junction. Just in case. Guess who's volunteered? You sit alone in the side chamber. The candle glows faintly. Your notebook lies open, pages smudged. You draw a little square tunnel, write the date, and add a tiny skull in the corner. You don't know why. Maybe to remind yourself you're still a person, that someone was here. You hear tapping again. Very faint. You press the stethoscope against the wall. This time it's not scraping. It's deliberate. A pattern. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Pause. Then again. You whisper to yourself, "That's not Morse." No one else is around to hear it. You keep listening. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Some say the earth remembers. That tunnels like this hold on to sounds. That sometimes you're not hearing the enemy, you're hearing the past. And for the first time, you feel something crawl, not across your skin, but across your mind. This tunnel remembers every scream, every breath, every last-second detonation, and maybe, just maybe, it's whispering them back. Sleep doesn't come easy anymore. Even when you're topside, wrapped in a blanket that smells like old socks and battlefield smoke, your body refuses to let go. Every time your head nods, you hear it again, the scrape, the tap, the long exhale of the tunnel breathing behind your eyes. And now you're back underground. Again. This time, you're not digging, you're wiring. See, digging is only half the job. Once you're close enough to enemy lines, close enough to hear them talk, sneeze, or curse their own commander, your job shifts from worm to bomber. Which brings us to your next task, laying a charge. A big one, and not just some little camouflage to collapse a listening post number. We're talking full-scale destruction. Enough explosives to turn enemy trenches into powder and craters. You've seen it done once before, from a distance. This time, you're the one laying the charge. The chamber has been carved over the past 2 weeks, not much taller than a doghouse. But the real trick is how neat it needs to be. Smooth walls, rounded edges. Why? Because pressure needs to build evenly when the blast detonates. Otherwise, the charge just pops, wasting energy like a bad firework. You crawl in with 2 others. You're hauling hundreds of pounds of ammonal. It looks innocent, white, granular, like baking soda. But one wrong jolt, and your name's a stain. You stack it carefully. Layer after layer, tamp it down. Your partner inserts the primer caps, hands steady. He's done this before. You try not to think about how casually he's handling your future. Quirky side note, some charges were triggered with electric wire. Others used burning fuses soaked in wax. One British crew famously miscalculated the fuse length and lit it with a cigarette. It still worked, mostly. This one? You're using a wire and a detonator box set at a safe distance, safe being a relative term. Once everything's placed, you help seal the chamber. Sandbags, boards, soil, anything to hold the pressure inward. Because when this thing blows, you want the force up, not back at you. And now you wait. Because it's not time yet. You and the others crawl back to the junction and sit in silence. The sergeant checks his watch. Still an hour to go. He says, "Synchronize your watches, lads." You don't have a watch. You nod anyway. Historians still argue whether tunneling charges truly worked as intended. Some say they shattered morale. Others claim most enemy troops just moved aside. But when they worked, oh, they worked. Take Messines Ridge, for example. June 9th. You're hoping this one's a little smaller, but just enough to matter. Your officer returns. 20 minutes, ready the wire. You crawl out of the tunnel entirely, through a narrow shaft leading to a nearby dugout, converted for detonation operations. It's quiet here, candlelit. A wooden box sits in the corner, wires snaking into the soil like veins. You're handed the plunger, told to wait for the signal. You sit, sweating, not from heat, but the knowledge that you've literally built a lightning strike, and now you're holding the switch. Then you hear it. A whistle from above. One long note, signal received. You press the plunger. For a split second, nothing happens. Then, the earth lifts. Even from here, deep and distant, you feel it. A ripple through the ground, a sound like the world exhaling with force. The dugout shakes. Dust rains down. Someone curses quietly. You climb out of the shaft and look toward the front. Even in the gray dawn, you can see the plume, massive, curling upward like the fist of an angry god. Soil, wood, debris, men. Gone, just gone. You don't cheer. No one does. There's no clapping, no chest-pounding glory. Just silence, and ringing ears, and the smell, burnt soil, warm chalk, and the acrid tang of metal cooked by force. One officer finally mutters, "Target neutralized, neutralized." Such a tidy word for evaporated. You walk the edge of the crater hours later. It's bigger than it should be. The explosion must have hit an underground void, amplifying the pressure. There are splinters of gear scattered everywhere. A rifle bent in half. A helmet without an owner. One of the sappers points and whispers, "That used to be a bunker, used to be. You take no pride in it, just quiet." And a strange realization. This is the only time the tunnel didn't try to kill you. You lived. You've lost all concept of time. Not in a poetic, dreamy way, but in a chalk-dusted, rat-bitten, trench-foot is definitely starting kind of way. You don't remember when you last saw sunlight, or tasted food that didn't come from a rusty tin, or heard someone laugh without it sounding like a nervous twitch. This is your life now, crawling, digging, waiting, and listening, always listening. The tunnel floor has turned into a soft paste, mud and human grime blended into something that sucks your boots with every step. You gave up trying to keep your socks dry 3 days ago. Your feet slosh, constantly. You joke they've become amphibious. You're not entirely wrong. One of the men on your team, nickname Lucky, because of course it is, has had to have 2 toes removed. He didn't even flinch when the medic cut them off. He just stared at the wall and mumbled, "Less to wash." You'd laugh, but your throat is sore. The air down here is damp and stale. Every breath feels borrowed. And then there are the rats. Oh, the rats. At first, you tried to ignore them, but they're bold, fat, greasy, with eyes that gleam like they know something you don't. You watch one drag a piece of biscuit out of your satchel. You stare. It stares back. Neither of you blinks. It wins. There are stories, plenty of them, about rats feasting on the bodies of the fallen, in no man's land, in collapsed tunnels, even in dugouts. One sapper swore he saw a rat gnawing on a dead man's ear like it was a Sunday roast. That image lives in your brain now, rent-free. You turn a corner in the tunnel and nearly trip over a pile of discarded boots, left by previous crews, or maybe the poor souls who never made it out. And on the walls, scratches. Not damage, actual scratches. Like someone tried to climb up with their bare hands, or leave a message, or just hold on. You don't ask. You move on. Historians still debate the psychological damage inflicted on tunnelers. Officially, there's shell shock. But down here, it's something else, something deeper. A slow erosion of self. Like the earth is not just closing around your body, but your mind. And you feel it. Bit by bit, you forget names. You forget faces. You even forget what you're digging toward. A fellow sapper, someone who once kept spirits high with whistled tunes, hasn't spoken in days. He stares at the chalk wall like he's waiting for it to blink. You nudge him once. He doesn't react. You nudge him again. He finally murmurs, "They're inside." You stop. Who? He doesn't answer. You never find out. Quirky fact. Tunnelers often made up games to keep themselves sane, counting drips, naming the rats, even carving dice out of chalk and gambling on candlelight. Anything to not think about the tons of earth pressing over their heads. You try it. You name a rat, Major Mudsworth. He bites you. So much for morale. You wrap your finger and move on. One day, you're told to dig a listening gallery. That's a fancy way of saying a little sideways chamber with nothing in it except a desperate hope you might hear something before it kills you. You spend 6 hours scraping at the wall, not digging forward, not expanding, just making a hole so someone can sit there in the dark and listen to the soil. You volunteer for the first shift, because sitting still, alone, and paranoid seems better than crawling forward into the unknown. You regret that decision exactly 4 minutes in. The silence is absolute. You can hear your heartbeat, the click of your tongue against your teeth. The air itself seems thick, like it's grown tired of being breathed and wants you to stop. And that's when it begins. A hum, low, so low you wonder if it's real. You hold your breath. The hum stops. You breathe again. It starts. That's when it hits you. It's in your ears. Not outside. Inside. Your own blood rushing. Your body has started making its own soundscape. Because it misses the noise, the sergeant calls you back after an hour. "Good work," he says. You nod, but don't reply. You haven't said a word in hours. Your throat feels raw. Your lips are cracked. And somehow, that hour in the gallery has left you more tired than 6 hours of digging. You pass another crew heading in. They look like you. Tired, chalk-dusted, silent. One gives you a weak smile. You try to return it. You fail. Later, back in the dugout, someone reads a letter aloud. It's from a brother, back home. Talks about cows, and sisters getting married, and jam. You can't picture any of it. The idea of open space, of green things, of sunlight, seems laughable. Someone asks you what you'll do when the war ends. You don't answer, because deep down you're starting to wonder, what if it doesn't? What if the tunnel just goes on forever? You're woken before dawn by a rumble so deep, it feels like it starts in your bones. Not the sharp bark of a shell, not the crack of gunfire. This is lower, heavier, longer, a noise that rolls through the earth and rattles the walls of your dugout like a whispered warning from a very large, very old god. You crawl outside, if you can even call it outside, and look east. You see the sky glowing, but not sunrise. That's no sun. That's the Battle of Messines. You're 10 kilometers away, and the ground is shaking under your boots. This is what everyone's been whispering about. The big one. 19 mines planted by British tunneling companies over months, each one packed with thousands of pounds of ammonal, hidden like buried thunder. And now? They've all gone off. At once. You're told later the blast was heard in London. Historians still argue whether it was the loudest non-nuclear explosion in human history. But when you feel the air tremble and see trees sway from a detonation miles away, you don't argue, you believe. The blast obliterates German front lines. Whole battalions vanish. Craters open like hungry mouths. One man claims a trench just disappeared, like someone erased it with God's finger. You and your team aren't part of the detonation crew, but you know the sappers who were. You've shared tea, joked about trench lice, slept shoulder to shoulder in the same cold mud. Some of them didn't make it out. The mines worked, but one detonated early, killed the team still inside. You walk to the rim of one of the craters that evening. It's massive, deep enough to swallow a house. The edges are jagged. Trees have been sheared like matchsticks. The soil is blackened and smolders in places, as if refusing to cool. And there, among the debris, you see what used to be a stretch of reinforced tunnel. Now it's just gone. An officer says, "Textbook success." You stare at the spot where your friend's team was working. You don't say a word, because here's the thing. The mines work, when they work. But when they don't, you get the other crater. A few weeks ago, another mine was laid further north. Good tunnel. Good team. Except they misjudged the soil compression. The charge blew backward, collapsed 5 junctions, buried 7 men. They're still down there. One of them had just written home about seeing his first firefly. Quirky fact, not all charges were meant to kill. Some were listening spoils, designed to deafen enemy tunnels so they couldn't hear digging. A kind of strategic noise bomb, but this one, Messines, it wasn't for strategy, it was for shock, and it worked. German soldiers were seen fleeing from positions before the infantry arrived, some with their hands over their ears, others just running. No weapons, no helmets, like the sky had turned against them. You head back to your own shaft in silence. No jokes, no singing, just the distant rumble still echoing in your chest like a second heartbeat. Later that night, you're tasked with inspecting one of your team's own minor charge sites. Not a megablast, just a little tactical sneeze, as the sergeant calls it. You crawl into the tunnel alone. The air is warm, unusually warm. You chalk it up to lingering energy from the detonations earlier. But something's off. Your boots make odd squelching noises. The soil isn't just wet, it's moving. You stop, peer ahead. The tunnel has started to collapse. Not all at once, not dramatically. Just a slow sag, like bread dough overproofed and giving up. You turn to go, but the tunnel behind you isn't there anymore. It's caved in. No warning, no roar, just gone. You scream. But the soil catches it. The darkness now is different, heavier. You can't hear the rats anymore, just your own breath, fast and sharp, and the dull patter of soil giving way. You crawl toward the last known junction, fingers slipping. You feel for the support beams, for the slope of the wall, for anything familiar. And then your hand hits water. It's pooling, rising. You've hit an underground seepage, maybe a spring, maybe runoff from above. Doesn't matter. It's climbing. You scramble upward, slipping. Your lamp is out. Your matches are damp. You fumble forward in total blackness, panting. Your foot strikes something. Wood? Yes, the shaft wall. You climb. Slow. Every inch feels like dragging the earth itself behind you. Your fingers find the top rung just as a hand reaches down and grabs your wrist. They pull. You break the surface gasping, covered in mud, half blind, your body shaking like it's trying to leave itself behind. No one speaks. They just wrap you in a blanket, hand you a tin cup of tea, and look away. This is normal. This is the job. This is tunnel work. And still, tomorrow you'll go back down. Because the digging never stops. You wake up choking. Not a nightmare, though you've had plenty, but from the taste of something wrong in the air. It's thick, sour, like rust and burned rubber. You blink into the dark, still wrapped in that scratchy blanket from the night before, and then you hear the yelling. Gas pocket, tunnel 4, move. You don't think, you crawl. By the time you reach the entrance shaft, it's chaos. Men coughing. One passed out, being dragged up by his collar. Someone throws a candle in, and it flickers green-blue before vanishing. You know what that means. Bad gas. Worse than carbon monoxide. Probably hydrogen sulfide, or worse, bubbling up from some ancient, trapped pocket of organic sludge. The earth doesn't just hold bones and coal. It holds poison, too. Gas masks help, sometimes. But down here, in tunnels this tight, gas creeps. It seeps. It hugs the floor and waits for lungs to show up. And once it's in your system, the damage is fast. Historians still argue whether most gas deaths underground were accidental or just inevitable. Some say faulty equipment. Others blame poor ventilation. You just know that the guy who shared your tea ration yesterday is now convulsing in the mud. You volunteer to help clear the shaft. It's not bravery, it's adrenaline. You cover your face with a soaked cloth, standard trick. Water helps filter some gases, and head in low. The air stings your eyes before you're 5 feet in. There's a guy up ahead, collapsed, mask dangling from one ear, unmoving. You crawl fast, too fast. Your head spins, your throat burns. You grab his collar, pull. He doesn't resist, or breathe. You drag him back anyway. Out into the clearer air. A medic rushes over, checks his pulse, shakes his head. You sit down hard, heart hammering, and that's when the tunnel rumbles. Not gas, not an enemy blast. The tunnel itself is shifting. See, explosions far away, like those at Messines, don't just break things nearby. They ripple. And sometimes those ripples reach places they're not meant to. Like your tunnel. You feel the floor sag again. Someone yells, support walls giving. You and 3 others grab planks, hammers, anything solid. You're not engineers, but that doesn't matter. Right now, you are the only thing standing between holding and buried. You press the timber upright, brace it against a cracked joist. Hammer, hammer. The wall groans. You hammer harder, and then it holds. Barely. For now, you fall back onto your haunches, exhausted. Quirky tidbit. Some tunneling companies gave their support beams nicknames. Old Betsy, King George, the Widowmaker, superstition mostly. But after a while, those beams start to feel like co-workers. If they creak, you listen. If they break, you mourn. You pat the one you just set. Good girl, you whisper. She creaks in reply. Later that day, you're assigned to inspect the damage, because apparently near death equals qualified. You re-enter the lower gallery. This time, you're alone. You crawl deeper. The candle burns low but steady, and then you hear it. Drip, 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 drip. Not unusual. But this one echoes, which means space, which means a void. You find it just past the last collapse, a pocket chamber recently exposed. Could be enemy, could be natural. Either way, it's unmapped. You crouch at the edge of the new opening, lamp held out. The light barely reaches the far side. The floor's uneven, littered with jagged rock and shattered wood. And bones. Not human, not recent. Probably animal. Probably. Still, it takes effort to keep your breath calm. You mark the spot with chalk, unknown chamber, and crawl back. Your report is brief. You don't mention the way the air felt colder inside, or the strange stillness, or how, just for a second, you thought you heard someone breathing who wasn't you. They tell you you're imagining things. Probably. Maybe. That night, you can't sleep. The tunnel hums behind your eyes. You swear you can still taste the gas. You wash your face, but the chalk smears back in anyway. And then the real panic sets in. Because tomorrow, you're being sent deeper. Not just through the existing shaft, but into a new branch, freshly dug, untested, and, of course, close to enemy lines. The sergeant explains it in simple terms. We need eyes down there. If they're tunneling under us, we need to know. You nod. Because nodding is what you do now. They hand you a stethoscope, a small pick, and a flask of something that smells suspiciously like bad whiskey. You crawl in at midnight. The tunnel is narrow, wet. The chalk here is fresh, flaky, soft, brittle in your hands. It muffles sound, swallows light. You set your candle, press the stethoscope to the wall. Nothing. Wait. No. Something. A dull scrape. Then a pause. Then another. Not fast. Not rhythmic. Almost careful. You press harder. Breathe shallow. It's closer than before. Not meters. Feet. Maybe less. You sit back. You could dig toward it. Try to intercept. Or you could wait. Try to collapse it when they get too close. But either way, you don't sleep tonight. Because now you know they're coming. And they're nearly here. You stare at the tunnel wall and realize it's not just a barrier anymore. It's a membrane. On the other side, German sappers, maybe 3, maybe more, are doing exactly what you're doing. Crawling, digging, sweating, listening. They're close. You can feel them. You imagine someone, just a few feet away, pressing their stethoscope to the dirt at this exact moment. Maybe they're hearing your breath right now. Maybe they're wondering if you are the one coming for them. And maybe they're scared too. Or maybe they're grinning. Either way, you're not here to make friends. The sergeant decides you're going to dig toward them, not for a charge. Not yet. First, you need to find them. Interception. Identify where their gallery is. See if it's a minor shaft or something bigger, something that might carry a mine large enough to kill 100 men up top. So you start. Slow, deliberate. No scraping, no chopping. You use a sharpened bayonet, held like a spoon, one small stroke at a time. Every chunk of soil you move goes into a sandbag. Every sandbag is passed behind you, like a relay of fear. The space gets tighter the closer you get. You can't turn around now, there's only forward. And here's the terrifying part. You're digging toward a potential bomb. One wrong movement, and you might pierce a pressure pocket, or hit a volatile charge. Or, if your timing is really spectacular, you might meet someone halfway. Historians still argue whether hand-to-hand combat ever happened in these underground meetings. Some say yes. Others insist there was never time. But a few reports describe sudden, silent violence. Bayonets in darkness, fists in the mud, no witnesses left to tell the full story. You reach the soft soil. That's your sign. You're almost there. You stop. Breathe shallow. Someone behind you whispers, "Are we through?" You shake your head and press your ear to the wall. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. They don't know you're here. Not yet. The sergeant whispers through the shaft. Collapse plan. Camouflage. You pass back the message. A small satchel is prepared. Tight, compact, timed fuse. Just enough ammonal to collapse their chamber. Not enough to cave in your own. At least, that's the theory. You press the satchel gently into the small chamber you've just dug. Wrap it in canvas. Anchor the fuse. Set the timer. 30 seconds. You crawl back, knees scraping, elbow slamming against the wall. You curse under your breath. Time moves like a slow-motion punch. 10 seconds. You flatten against the floor. Then, thump. Not a boom, not a roar. A thump. The ground flexes. Dust falls like mist. You taste it on your tongue, chalky bitter. Silence follows. You wait. Then, one of your mates crawls forward to assess. Comes back wide-eyed. Gone, he whispers. Their tunnels, gone. You exhale. Maybe even smile. Small victories. Then your sergeant adds, "They'll try again, same direction, new shaft." Of course they will, because this is what the war beneath the war looks like. Not a battlefield, a honeycomb of vengeance. And here's the unnerving part. Sometimes you find things in enemy shafts. Not men, not gear, messages. One time, a sapper found a wooden board with the words, "Hallo Tommy," etched into it. Another team discovered a candle stub with a German coin melted inside, proof they'd been right there, just days apart. Today, you find nothing. Just silence. You mark the collapsed shaft and head back. You reach a junction and pause. Something feels wrong. The air is still. Not just quiet, dead. You light your candle. It flickers, then flares blue. You freeze. Gas. Again. But this time, it's not from soil pockets. You realize the collapsed shaft may have pushed fumes back into your own. You yell, but your voice is a croak. You slap the side of the tunnel, your warning signal. 3 quick strikes. The team ahead turns. Panic erupts. You all scramble back, coughing, eyes watering. Someone's mask fails. He vomits and collapses. Another drags him toward the shaft. You climb out last, dizzy, half blind. Someone hands you vinegar-soaked gauze for your mouth, a standard trick for gas exposure. It burns. You're told that means it's working. Great. You sit in the trench wall's shadow, panting, and then it hits you. The real terror of tunnel work isn't the dirt, the rats, or even the gas. It's this. You never know if you're winning. Above ground you can see the lines move, hear the whistles, measure gains in feet and flags. Down here, every victory is temporary. Every shaft sealed is replaced. Every enemy crushed by a camouflage is replaced by another pair of hands, another stethoscope pressed to the earth. The war beneath the war doesn't end. It just relocates. And so do you. Because your sergeant just got new orders. Dig left, he says. The left-hand shaft is older. You can tell by the timber. Cracked, warped and weeping little beads of sap like it still remembers sunlight. Some parts have been reinforced with sandbags, others just with hope. The walls flake when you brush against them. Every step stirs up powder so fine it coats your tongue like flour. You're assigned here now. Listening duty. Again. But this time, you're not alone. You're paired with a new sapper, a skinny lad with shaky hands and the sort of wide, hopeful eyes that suggest he hasn't been down long enough to know better. He introduces himself as Reggie. You try not to learn names anymore. Names become memories. Memories become weights. Still, he talks. A lot. He tells you about his mother's garden, his younger sister's piano recitals, his dog Basil. You nod occasionally, unsure if he's talking to you or just trying to drown out the silence. And then, after an hour of crawling and whispering and poking at the wall with a stethoscope, Reggie asks, "Do you think we'll make it out of this?" You freeze. Because what do you say? That most tunnelers don't? That even if the war ends, you'll likely wake up sweating from dreams where the walls collapse in slow motion? That the sound of dirt falling is something you'll never unhear? You stay silent. He gets the message. You both go back to listening. And that's when it happens. Whomp. Not a blast. Not quite. More like a pressure wave. A deep, muted pop that shakes the earth but doesn't shatter it. The candle between you flutters violently. You press your stethoscope to the wall. And you hear nothing. Which is somehow worse. Because when the enemy's silent, it usually means one of three things. They've finished digging, they've evacuated, or they've detonated. You crawl to the junction chamber. The sergeant is already waiting, looking grim. "Check the southern spur," he says. They were working near that spot. You go. Of course you go. You and Reggie crawl through the side tunnel. The air is thick, stale. Reggie's breathing gets louder, faster. Then you see it. A fissure in the wall. Jagged, unnatural. The timber is splintered. The soil has pulled back like something was sucked from behind it. You look at Reggie. He nods, tight-lipped. Together you squeeze through. What you find isn't a collapse. It's a meeting point. Somehow, the tunnel's connected. Your tunnel and theirs. And the Germans were here, recently. You find gear left behind, scraps of canvas, a broken lamp, even a cigarette still smoldering. But no people. That's worse. Because it means they're not dead. They're nearby, and you're in their gallery. Reggie panics. His breath gets loud. He fumbles for his revolver. You whisper, "Stop." But it's too late. A voice rings out from deeper in the chamber. Sharp, foreign, German. You freeze. Another voice replies. Two of them. Then footsteps, closer. You grab Reggie and pull him back through the fissure. He stumbles, but you push him forward. The tunnel shakes again, just slightly, but enough to dislodge dust in a curtain behind you. You make it back to your shaft. Report the breach. The officers argue. Collapse it? Trap them inside? Try to ambush? No one can agree. Because now it's not theory anymore. It's close combat. Historians still debate how often tunnel fights happened at point blank. Rare, they say. But the ones that did? Brutal. Weapons meant for stabbing in 2-foot spaces. Punches in the dark. No screams, just grunts and gasps and gurgles. Reggie volunteers to go back in and help seal the breach. You don't stop him. You just hand him a coil of wire and say, "Don't light anything too fast." He grins, nervously, and vanishes into the dark. You wait. Time drags. You check your candle. Half gone. Still no sound. Then, boom. A small one. Contained. Just enough to collapse a wall, you hope. You rush to the shaft mouth, and Reggie's there, covered in dust, smiling. "You won't believe it," he says. "They were digging the wrong way." You blink. "What?" He nods. "We weren't their target. They'd passed us. Headed under our front lines. Never knew we were there." The officers confirm it. After the detonation, a secondary collapse opened part of their shaft. Their tunnel had a bend, leading not to your position, but beneath an infantry trench. You caught them mid-plan, and you stopped it. For once, You really stopped it. A small, hard-won victory. Quirky fact? Some tunneling companies left calling cards in enemy tunnels they discovered. Coins, cigarette tins, even rude notes carved in the walls. Like a muddy, passive-aggressive game of tag. You consider leaving one now. Instead, you just carve your initials into the wall. Tiny. Faint, but yours. Reggie looks at it. Think they'll find that? You shrug. Maybe. He chuckles, and in that small, damp, exhausted moment, you feel something close to hope. It won't last, but it's something. A week passes. You know because someone scratched a tally on the dugout wall, not because you felt it. Down here, time is measured in shifts and shaft collapses, not in days or nights. You've stopped counting meals. You sleep when your head hits wood. Wake when someone nudges your boot. You've also stopped asking questions like, what's next? Because down here, the answer is always the same. More digging. But today, something's different. You're called topside. Clean uniform. Quick wash in a tin basin. And then you're marched to a tent with a wooden desk and a nervous-looking officer holding a clipboard. He's interviewing you. Why? Because they're looking for more tunnelers, volunteers technically. But really, it's you'll do. They want your opinion. Not about strategy. Not even about safety. Just, who do you think will survive it? And suddenly you realize, most of the people they assign to this job aren't soldiers. They're specialists. Miners from Cornwall. Coal workers from Wales. Sewer engineers from London. Pipe fitters, bricklayers, moles in human clothing. Reggie, he's the odd one out. Not a digger, not even close. But he was good with tools, calm in a crisis, and now he's being considered for permanent tunneling duty. You sit across from the officer, and he asks, what makes someone good at it? You think. Then answer, someone who doesn't mind being forgotten. He raises an eyebrow. Explain. So you do. You explain that tunnelers don't get medals. Their victories are buried. Their failures erased. No parades. No poems. Just silence. The officer writes something down. Doesn't look up. You leave the tent and walk back to the shaft. Reggie's waiting. Am I in? He asks. You nod. And now you feel responsible. Because this job eats people, slowly, and you just offered it a meal. Later that evening, as you're setting timber in a new gallery, one of the older sappers tells a story. There was this bloke, he says. Lancashire. Had a nose like a bent spade and arms like tree trunks. Dug faster than anyone. What happened? Reggie asks. Dug too far, the man replies. Too fast. Broke through a German shaft and got shot in the face. You all sit in silence for a moment. Then, Reggie. Still faster than me. That earns a few chuckles. These are the people you serve with. Rough. Tired. Equal parts gallows humor and grit. One of them keeps a harmonica tied around his belt, but never plays it underground. Don't want Jerry thinking I'm whistling a fuse. Another carries a photo of a woman he claims is not his wife, but won't explain. And then there's Ghost Tommy. Not a man, a story. Passed down from shaft to shaft. The tale goes, there's a tunnel somewhere, no one knows where. That's cursed. Every sapper assigned to it vanishes, not from collapse, not from gas, just gone. Some say the tunnel leads to a buried crypt. Others say it crosses enemy lines in a perfect circle, trapping those who enter in an eternal dig. Reggie says, sounds like nonsense. You smile. That's the point. Because stories like Ghost Tommy are all you have. Tiny, absurd ways to explain the fear, to make it manageable, human. Historians still argue whether tunneling companies formed their own unique culture, something distinct from the infantry. Most agree, yes, a language, a rhythm, a code. You believe it, because down here you become someone else, not a soldier, not a civilian, a digger, part rat, part engineer, part priest in the cathedral of damp earth. You spend the next hours digging what's known as a listening limb, a narrow one-man shaft pointed in the direction of suspected German activity. It's cramped even by tunnel standards. Your shoulders scrape both walls as you move. Your helmet bumps the ceiling constantly. It's like crawling through a coffin someone forgot to finish building. And it's here, in this shaft, that something strange happens. You hear nothing. Not silence. Absence. No soil shifting. No water. No echo. Just a strange, flat quiet that makes your teeth hurt. You light your candle. It burns, then extinguishes. You try again. Same result. No gas smell. No draft. Just refusal. You back out slowly, heart thudding. Later, you tell the sergeant. He frowns. Old shaft, probably collapsed behind a gas pocket. But the way he says it, you can tell he doesn't believe it. You mark the tunnel as unstable. No one goes back. And that night, for the first time, you dream of Ghost Tommy. He's crawling just ahead of you. His lamp is lit, but his body casts no shadow. You call to him, but he doesn't turn around. Just keeps digging, and digging, and digging. You're on the night shift again. Somewhere above you, artillery booms and machine guns chatter, but down here it's just the scrape of your blade in clay and the creak of timber. You're digging a new crosscut. They say it's to intercept an enemy gallery spotted near the map grid marked 17C. You nod like that means anything anymore. The air smells like boots and moldy canvas. You've stopped reacting to it. It's just the smell of existence now. The new digger assigned to your team is named Fitz. Big hands. Quiet. Looks like someone chiseled him from granite and gave him a bad shave. He doesn't say much, but he works like he's got something to prove or something to forget. You wonder what his story is. Then you stop wondering. Because curiosity is a luxury tunnelers can't afford. Too many of the people you get curious about end up missing. Buried. Replaced. Fitz doesn't hum, doesn't joke, he just digs. You find that comforting. Until, 2 hours in, he stops and says, "This soil's wrong." You kneel beside him. He's right. It's soft, too soft, fresh, not natural, which means someone's been digging from the other side. Again. You pass the signal back. The sergeant doesn't hesitate. Intercept and engage. And suddenly, everything gets quiet. Not in the peaceful way. In the we're hunting each other through dirt way. You keep going. Your blade scrapes inches at a time. Every breath sounds too loud. Every cough feels like a confession. Then, a hollow thump. Your blade punches through something that isn't clay. You freeze. Light? No. But air. A pocket. You've made contact. You whisper for Fitz. He crawls forward, tests the wall with his hand. Then, from the other side, a whisper. You can't make out the words, but the tone is unmistakable. A warning. A German voice, maybe two. And then, silence. You pull back. Fitz starts rigging the charge. Small, tight, directional. Just enough to crush the pocket and whatever, or whoever, is inside. As you retreat, a memory hits you. Something Reggie once said. They're probably just like us down there. And maybe they are. But someone has to go first. The charge goes off with a muffled pulse. The tunnel shudders. A small puff of chalk dust bursts from the fissure. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to turn presence into absence. You don't speak for a long time. No one does. Later, back at the dugout, someone's playing the harmonica. Poorly. It echoes through the shafts like a ghost whistling. You find it oddly beautiful. Then Fitz speaks for the second time all day. Ever wonder what's above us? You pause. You haven't thought about it in weeks. Trees? Roads? Churches? Civilians? The war above has become myth. The sky, an old rumor. You shake your head, and then Fitz says, "I was a coal miner. Before." That explains a lot. You glance at him. Why this then? He shrugs. They said it would feel familiar. It does. Too familiar. Historians still argue whether WWI tunnelers were more at risk physically or psychologically. Some say the body breaks first. Others say the mind erodes faster. You say, yes, both. At the same time. You spend the next days clearing an old branch. It's abandoned, maybe 3 months unused, but it's still mostly intact. You find a pair of boots in the corner. No body, no note, just boots. Someone jokes. He probably walked off without them. You all chuckle, but it feels wrong. You decide to check further in. You find what looks like a carved message in the wall, scrawled into the chalk with a blade. Still digging. No name, no date. You stare at it a while. Fitz suggests sealing the chamber. Too unstable to keep open. You agree. But you trace the words one last time before you go. That night, Reggie returns from another shaft, soaked, exhausted, wide-eyed. He says, "They're not digging toward us anymore." "What do you mean?" "They're digging under us." You sit upright, because that means they're not trying to intercept. They're trying to plant. You scramble for the map. Sketch out estimated positions. Calculate tunnel lengths, angles. If Reggie's right, their line crosses under your main shaft, your sleeping quarters, your entire crew. You alert the sergeant. He curses, orders immediate inspection. You spend the next hour crawling with stethoscopes and candles. You find it. Faint, rhythmic, close. Fitz whispers, "They're almost done." You look around. You can't stop them in time. There's only one option. Evacuation. The sergeant orders everyone topside. Fast, quiet. You leave gear behind. Photos, packs, journals, all of it. Because if they detonate, it'll all be chalk mist anyway. You reach the surface, lungs burning, just as the ground rumbles. Not a boom. A swell. Like the earth is breathing out. The shaft behind you collapses inward, gently, almost politely. Dust rolls like fog. And the main tunnel, gone. Just like that, dozens of men spared. By minutes. Reggie sits beside you, silent, pale. Fitz wipes dust from his eyes and mutters, "Familiar, all right." You exhale, not relief, just habit. Because you know this isn't the end. They'll dig again, and so will you. Because this is what tunnelers do. You keep digging. Even when the ground doesn't want you to. You've dug for so long that you can't remember what normal feels like. Not peace, not safety. Just normal. A bed that doesn't shift beneath you. Air that doesn't taste like limestone and regret. Shoes that don't squelch. A silence that doesn't mean someone is digging closer. But this morning, something happens that almost feels like normal. You're told your unit is rotating out. Not permanently. Not discharge. Not victory. Just a break. Above ground. Your reaction isn't joy. It's disbelief. Then suspicion. Then a quiet hope so small you're afraid to feed it in case it dies in your hands. You pack your satchel, if you can call it that. It's a threadbare bag of half-broken tools, a few letters, a biscuit that's now more like compressed chalk, and the stub of a candle you've been keeping for no good reason. You crawl out of the shaft like a mole seeing daylight for the first time. And there it is. Sky. Flat. Gray. Unimpressive. But to you, it might as well be the Sistine Chapel. You blink against the light. Your eyes sting. Your shoulders sag forward, tunnel posture. You stand upright for the first time in days. Your spine pops audibly. Someone nearby says, "Careful, you'll set off another charge." You almost laugh. Almost. They send you to a rear camp. Wooden huts. Real food. A bed that's lumpy but horizontal. A kettle boiling on a stove that doesn't leak smoke straight into your lungs. It's paradise. Except it's not. Because every creak of floorboard sounds like cracking timber. Every gust of wind mimics the breath of a shifting shaft. Every shadow in the corner feels like a void waiting to collapse. You can't sleep the first night. The room is too open. Too still. There's no candlelight. No whisper of rats. Just clean sheets and the terrifying question, what do you do now? You find Reggie the next morning, sitting on a crate and scribbling something in a notebook. Writing home, you ask. He nods, then looks up. You think you'll go back. You don't answer right away, because the truth is, you don't know. There's talk of new tunneling assignments. A sector near the Somme. Bad ground. Shallow cover. worse odds. Fitz already signed up. Not done digging yet, he said. Not until someone tells me I can stop. You know the feeling. Historians still debate why so many men stayed in tunneling units, even when offered transfers. Some say loyalty. Some say familiarity. Others suggest it was trauma disguised as duty. You think it's simpler. You become the tunnel. And when you leave it, something's missing. Later that day, you help inventory equipment, coils of old wire, timbers warped from moisture, helmets with candle clips still attached. You pick one up and turn it in your hands. There's a name scratched on the inside, not yours, not anyone you knew, just a name, and a date. Faded. You put it back down. Reggie appears beside you. You okay? He asks. You nod. Then lie. Yeah. And suddenly, without thinking, you ask him, do you remember the smell? He nods. Neither of you say which one. You don't have to. There's a moment of stillness between you. Not silence. Stillness. The kind that's earned, not given. Then someone calls out. The truck to the next post is leaving. You've got 30 seconds to decide. Reggie looks at you. Well? You glance at the sky again. Then at the ground. Then back at the sky. And in that moment you remember something. You once thought you'd never survive a week in the tunnels. But you did. You survived months. Maybe not all of you, but enough. You shoulder your pack. Let's slow down now. You've crawled through claustrophobic tunnels, felt the weight of the world, literally, pressing down on your back. You've heard the whispers of enemy diggers just feet away. You've worked in near darkness, with only the flicker of a candle to mark the boundary between you and the void. Your hands are calloused, your lungs heavy with dust, your boots soaked through with weeks of silence and dread. And yet, you're still breathing. You've made it out. Just for now. Long enough to stretch, to see the sky, to remember that somewhere above the mud and chalk, there are still birds, still trees, still something not war. It's easy to forget what peace feels like when you've lived underground. But now, just for this moment, you can remember. The ground is still. The air is cool. There are no tunnels left to dig tonight. So let it all go. Close your eyes. Feel your body unwind, inch by inch. Let the silence be gentle, not menacing. Let the darkness around you feel like rest, not suffocation. You're safe here. You've escaped the dirt for now. Tomorrow, maybe there will be more battles to fight. But not tonight. Tonight, you sleep. And the world stays still.